welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Happy Hour. Mike, what's going on?
Derek, I made you walk. We'll talk about it during our weekly episode, but it's fine. So we traveled. We're in downtown Buffalo, and we're with our friends. So I'm super excited to dive in because there's a lot to discuss because you guys are new in the... We'll say you're new in the neighborhood. So what's going on? You want to introduce yourself?
My name's Roy Backus, and...
You have no title?
Oh, we can go with title. I'm the minister without portfolio here at Café Godot, because that's the best title to have, I think.
Wow. I am Kevin Thurston, and I'm a food jockey here at Café Godot.
A food jockey?
That's right.
Okay, so let's, first of all, define the roles, because that's never, I mean, Roy, that's never been used ever in the history of the Buffalo Happy Hour.
Nice.
So
I'm a nerd, and one of the things, about a lot of things, and minister without portfolio, I remember coming across that. It was in some, every once in a while, when I was younger, I thought it was fun to, you'd come home after a long day bartending at 3 a.m. and turn on the British Parliament live when C-SPAN had that on and get high and watch people insult each other to the worst part, but start the insult by the right honorable gentleman from Gloucester molests children. And you're like, wow, he's the right honorable child molester. That's wonderful. And they go back and forth. And one of the times I was watching it, there was a guy from the government coming up that they set up to keep answering questions that were vague, and his actual title was Minister Without Portfolio. And I'm like, that's the best fucking job anywhere. I'm the minister, and I'm too important to be narrowed down to finance or to streets or whatever else. I don't have a portfolio. I can talk about anything. And so that's where I'm actually going to change that on our corporate docs. I'm boring president on our corporate doc. I think I'm changing it to minister without portfolio. We're going to have to...
In large part because he is indeed happy to talk about anything.
as you just saw. Yeah, so that's where that one comes from.
Gotcha. And then food jockey, in layman's terms, would be the chef.
I suppose.
Okay. Perfect.
There's a scene in Caddyshack where he, it's the where he, I could taste the steak still has the marks where the jockey was hitting it, and now I'm going to think of Kevin every time
oh my goodness,
every time I see that film, which is going to be wonderful.
So starting at the beginning, how did you guys meet, and then what led to this creation, and where are we? Let's start there.
We are, I heard the host say that we're in downtown Buffalo.
Sure. I believe, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So, Café Godot, 388 Porter Avenue?
388 Porter Avenue.
Got that one right. And so...
In the 201.
So, this is our cafe. We're open for breakfast and lunch. Does that answer where we are?
We're at the heart. We're in the heart of one of the historic thoroughfares on the west side, Columbus Park, Allentown convergence in Buffalo. If you walk 400 yards that way, you get Kleinhans. Not even, maybe, 400 yards that way, you get Kleinhans. If you walk that way, you get Juville and the Peace Bridge. If you just get up to the corner, you can actually see the lake from where we are. It makes for wonderful watching snow blow in on snowy days.
And if you walk a mile past that, you finally get to our car.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yes, because that's where I forced our vehicle to park and made him walk.
So he tricked me. So when we were I don't really come to this area often. I guess he lived here for a little bit, but he's like, you can't park on the side of the street here. I'm like, oh, I don't know. All right, sounds good. So literally a mile and a half down the road, he's like, this is where we're parking. Man up. Good thing you got your boots on. Like, whoa, all right.
Basically, we also have full-time jobs. I know he's currently working from home. I'm like, well, perfect opportunity. Let's get our steps in. He failed to inform me that every day at lunch he walks his dog, but news to me. So
it's good that you're trying to keep your partner healthy.
Right.
See? Also, very common for dog owners to walk their dogs.
Is it?
Yes.
See, I learned something.
All right, so how do you guys know each other?
Right. That was a question from a while back.
Yes, yeah.
We have a mutual friend, Lorna Perez, and, she knew me and she knew Roy, but not and then she was like, the two of you need to meet, blah, blah, blah. Eventually we did. She got jealous of our friendship. We are all still friends.
Well, we also, in her defense of getting jealous, we got to the point where like we started trolling her with our friendship because she introduced us. So of course she had to be every time we were all together. But then it would get to the point where we'd run into each other and like take selfies and text them to her, or be like, "Wish Lorna was here," and then she'd be like, "You didn't invite me," and we're like, "Oh well, okay."
We wish you were here.
We didn't say we wanted you there. We just wish you were. And so that went on for a while, and she stopped hating us about a year and a half ago and got back to liking us.
And then Roy and I, for probably 2 years at least, have been talking about maybe opening up a place. And it got to the point where before we looked at here, I was like, if we don't go look at here, I never want to talk about opening up a place with you again because I'm sick of it.
Well, yeah, we had talked about doing we had talked about doing a place, and both of us we both have had multiple jobs outside of the restaurant industry, but I think the one constant, which is why Lorna couldn't believe we didn't know each other, because we both were English majors, both work in that kind of like, both Kevin's taught, I teach at Buff State, Kevin's taught overseas, Kevin's worked for Just Buffalo, but we've both worked in the restaurant business since we were 16. On it, like mostly on for me, like 98% of my jobs have been in the restaurant business, even though I've had second jobs, and I think most of Kevin's have. And so we got to that point where we'd start to have discussions about like, man, if I own my own place, I'd want to do this way, or why can't we pay people a fair wage and still have them figure out a way for them to get tips, or why can't we use more ethically sourced products? And we found out that even though we come across very differently, we have a lot. We share a lot in common on the ethos of how we wanted to run a business and how we like to see restaurants run. And so the opportunity came up. We had talked about some other places. Luckily, we didn't. I know you don't want to talk about the thing going on out in the world, but we had come close to a couple. Like we had gotten to the point where we were looking at a couple big things where it's like, it's a $300,000 property, and we'll get some investors, and we'll go $500,000 in, and we'll do all this. And then everything happened with COVID, and both of us were like, "Thank fucking God we didn't do that." That would have been like, it would have been awful if we had 25 employees and a $7,000 monthly nut to make when we can't sell anything.
Yeah.
And also, this space became available in part because of that as well. Somebody had already signed a lease for this spot, but they couldn't get out of their previous lease, and so our landlord is great, and our landlord allowed them to leave their lease. He's like, "You got bigger problems than trying to open up a cafe right now. Go solve your." And so this spot presented itself to us in a way, and I've always liked it. I used to come here when it was Buffalo Rome, and I don't know, just it's a cool little spot, and so yeah, here we are.
In some ways, it's serendipity had a lot to do with a lot of this stuff. I mean, not wherever you are and what you think, how the universe works, or all that stuff. It's the way we came into this spot, and with everything going on in the world, there were a lot of things had to fall in line in exactly certain ways. I mean, if you would have if you would have told me 2 years ago that we would have put in the amount of time and finances, like, Kevin, you and your partner are going to have, you and your wife now are going to have a baby, and we're going to both spend most of our money getting into a spot and open up, and we can't really serve people, which is both of our strong points. Let's do this. I would have looked at you and said, yeah, there's no fucking way I'll do that. Now I can't imagine that I would have done it any other way or done anything else. So I mean, it sort of fell into place.
So regarding the shift from large to small due to the world in 2020 in general, how did that impact other aspects too, where you're like, okay, instead of brewing 40 gallons of coffee, we'll just do 3 pots, and then we can shift our entire business model to fit the world? And then how did you use that to your advantage? Because you guys have such a unique, it's a culture. And you're bringing, like you mentioned, like the fair wage, you're using normal, like really healthy organic products, and then you're reaching a totally different market that most other places are not, where it's just like in and out, I need as many people as I can to turn product, and you're like, why don't we just do this slightly different? So what was that shift like?
Well, for me, it wasn't too crazy in that I was cooking at the Little Club and serving at the Little Club, and those were just kind of small plates that we were making as they came up. So working on a smaller scale is something I have experience with. I think what's really interesting, and one of the reasons I like working with Roy so much, is that he's coming at it from the exact opposite angle. You know, if you want.
Yeah, I cut my. I've worked in small places before, and I owned a small place in North Carolina in 04 and 05, and then came back to Buffalo. But before that, the longest tenure I ever had a job in my life was I was the first person that wasn't a manager hired at Pearl Street Grill and Brewery, and I was there till 2002. Left in a unceremonious leaving that wasn't good, and went to North Carolina. Had a couple other jobs. Worked at Osaka and Blue, which was wonderful. And then when I came back in 05, one of my dear friends and a guy I trained as he was coming up and who's trained me in a lot of other ways. His name is Josh Ketry. He actually was like, "Why don't you come back and work at Pearl Street?" And I'm like, "Dude, are you crazy?"
Right.
And I went back, and I walked in and I was like, all right, this is good. I'm not managing. I don't want keys. I don't want any responsibility. I'm going to figure this stuff out. And 3 weeks later, the GM, Bill Cassell, tossed a set of keys at me and is like, "You're managing anyway. You may as well have them." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. We're doing this again." And I was there pretty much from November to 05 to the beginning of 2017 when I left start Buffalo Distilling. So I was at Pearl Street 17 years. And so for me, the idea is it's been fun again to have to scale back because what I remember walking in and nonchalantly people are like, "Oh, how was your day?" It's like, "It was okay, "Oh, I worked Friday lunch. How many covers did you do?" 475. And they're like, "What? You fed 475 people on Friday lunch?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it was sort of slow. We sent a couple servers home early." And they're like, I mean, the first day we did, the first time the World Juniors were in Buffalo, I was joking around with Kevin, who is the guy who does all the purchasing over there. He's like the second in command guy at all the locations. And, there were a ton of Canadians in town, so they ordered a shitload of chicken wings. And I was like, "Man, we're not stopping with the chicken wings." And we had fryers all over the place going crazy. And we totaled it up at the end of the night, and I'm like, "How many chicken wings did we do?" And he's like, "We did 3,300 pounds of chicken wings in 6 hours." And I'm like, we made a Volkswagen of chicken wings.
Literally.
In a shift. I mean, and again, it was like the scale was so large. Like, the only other beer we served at the time that wasn't ours was Labatt Blue and Blue Light. They parked a full 18-wheeler refrigerated truck in the back that was loaded with stock. And every third day, they would take all that one away that was now filled with empty kegs and empty bottles and bring another full one and park it in the parking lot so we could unload it. So going from that to this, it's sort of funny. I talked to Kevin, we'll talk probably as we go on about our plans for the patio. And I'm like, "Well, we're going to do 40 outside and we'll have 20 in here and we'll have, so we'll have 60 people, and hopefully on a busy day, on a Saturday, we'll turn that 2.5 times so we can serve, 130, 140 miles from 8 in the morning to 4. And he peeks out of there's a little hole about this big in the kitchen. And he's like, "How the fuck am I supposed to do that out of here with 2 ovens?" And we're like, "Let's figure this out."
Yeah, because the kitchen will not grow.
Yeah.
Just because we've got more seats.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, now it's just if we sell 15 of one particular item in a day, I'm like, well, who got the memo? And just as opposed to 3,300 pounds of chicken wings.
Yeah. So what was it like transitioning from a place that's open all day, basically for lunch and dinner, to then saying, "We're just going to do lunch," because you only do lunch.
We do breakfast and lunch. We open at 8, we go till 4. Not to piss off any of my restaurant industry friends who did this, this is what we all worked for our whole life. I taught at the Culinary Institute when I first started. I went back to school when I turned 40. Lorna, who introduced us also, she worked for me while she was getting her doctorate at UB and got the job at Buff State. And I had 170 credits and no undergrad degree. And she was like, "Why don't you come back to school?" So my first I stayed in, got my master's. I went back when I was 39. I finished when I was 44. I started teaching. And my first teaching gig was at the Culinary Institute at N-Trip, which worked out great. I taught English at the Culinary Institute, but I've had the restaurant background. And so where was I going with that? What was the question?
The time that you have for now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so coming through all that, one of the things I always would tell my students, they would all look at me and be like, "Well, I'm going to graduate with, I'm 21 and I'm going to graduate with my culinary degree. So, I'm only going to work, Monday through Thursday and that. And I'm like, no, you're going to spend 20 years and you're going to work 50 to 51 Saturdays. You're going to work 50 to 51 Fridays. Your days off are going to be Tuesday and Wednesday or Monday and Tuesday. You're going to work every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night until at least 11 or 12. You're going to work almost every holiday if your place is open for those holidays. And that's just the reality of the grind of the business. So in some ways it's a different grind because we're up a lot earlier than we ever have been and other things like that. But in other ways it's so wonderful. Like, I'm going to go home and cook dinner tonight when we're done with this because I don't have to go to work. And it's wonderful being able to do that.
I agree. It is wonderful.
So,
is your background the same? The same restaurant, like time frames?
I started smoking cigarettes at 14 when I was a dishwasher underneath the table on Niagara Falls Boulevard. And then, let's see. Worked along while going to college and all of that. Worked at a country club, and that's where I got exposed to, I guess, the higher end of things. I didn't know wine or anything like that. It's not like growing up in Tonawanda. That's a very common thing. Besides, put some more ice in this honey.
Grab another beer, please.
And so learned all those things and liked them, and just kind of kept that around. Worked in PR for a while, and I worked for a PR firm in Baltimore that specialized in restaurant openings.
Okay.
So we'll call it restaurant industry adjacent. And just kind of I always kept a toe in and around. Lived in Korea for a bunch of years, and then came back. Moved to New York. I wanted to move somewhere after Korea that didn't require a vehicle. And so, the United States goes from this big to about this big.
Right.
And then when I was in New York, I found myself managing restaurants, and it's oh, this again. And then moved back home and was working at Just Buffalo, and then started working at Klein Hands first. I was in charge of the concessions at Klein Hands.
Okay.
And then from there, moved to Barrel and Brine, where I worked with RJ and Lindsay, fermenting and doing all that kind of stuff. And then worked at Little Club. And it was maybe about a year ago, I looked at my friend Dan, and I was like, I guess I'm a restaurant person. And, in part, I think there's weird societal kind of pressures to have people want to pursue office work, right? That seems to be where everybody's pushed, and that reflects both food and beverage, but also what we call blue collar positions, right, and stuff like that. So skilled labor, and so you kind of are well, growing up, everyone told me I was smart. I was in all these AP classes and all of this. Surely I'm not supposed to be working on my feet. And then eventually you're actually, it makes me happier. I should probably go work on my feet.
If I had a dollar for every well-meaning person in my life who was like, "You're really smart. When are you going to get a real job?" I'd already be retired, and I'd probably have a house and TPC Sawgrass where I'd play golf every day.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things I think that's been super refreshing. Nice golfers. I'm super play it if you haven't. By the way, it's worth every fucking day. Yeah. Kevin and I had this discussion the other day where I had asked him about, when did you finally realize, when did you feel okay enough to admit that you're a restaurant person? And it's I freely say it now, I teach, I do other things, but I'll never get this out of my system. I'm a hospitality guy, more than just restaurants. I think for both of us, even though he's more in back and I'm more in front, we're both hospitality guys, and that's what we do. And I think for me anyway, that's the magic of these spaces. I mean, you can all pick up a book, and especially now, you can go on YouTube and watch somebody show you how to, slice something or cut something or ferment something. But it's coming and feeling special and feeling like you're being catered to and talked to. It's theater in a lot of ways, and this is probably the first time in the United States anyway. It was a little maybe different in France and in a few other places, a few spots in Asia. But really this last maybe 8 or 10 years since the explosion of Bourdain and the food scene, where this is thought of as an acceptable career.
Sure.
This was never, it was never something that, you're going to dedicate your life to this. Why would you do that? And it's, in some ways it's been looked down upon, and I think that's unfortunate.
And there's, it's funny you mentioned, because you're both well versed in travel and being outside of Buffalo. And one of the biggest things that most people do is when they leave Buffalo, they're like, why isn't something like this in Buffalo? And one of those is a cafe or a pop-up on the side of the sidewalk, and the guy's just giving coffee out. And I mean, I'm in trades, like the whole blue collar stereotype thing, and I'll leave a customer or a job site, and I'm like, I really just want a cup of coffee because I got to drive 45 minutes to the other side of the city, and I'm exhausted because I've been doing this since 6 or 7. It's like, so what? Where can I go? And you don't want to go to Dunkin' because those, I mean, they're garbage in Buffalo. They just literally got overran by Tim Hortons, and you're sick of Tim Hortons because they're always overcrowded. You don't want to spend $7 at Starbucks. Excuse me. So you're like, what do I do? And it's great because if you're in the city of Buffalo and around it, you can always swing in and find 1 to 5 cafes that are generally close to you that serve a lot of good things. And most of them are on the same tier of ingredients, products, like the vibe and the overall culture and environment that most people just like want to sit down and relax in. So it's awesome that this exists because the whole neighborhood can come here and relax. But then the other side is you have the people that work the 6 to 4 that can swing in, grab a cup of coffee, and then leave. And it won't impede on any operation that you guys do. So in that, how did you cultivate your menu? Because you both have so many ideas and such a well-versed background, from 480 people to all different sorts of options, whether it's culture or not. So how did you kind of pick and choose what was easy but then also beneficial?
Well, one thing that you just kind of were talking about is I should say there are certainly days where I want to have something that will put me to sleep by 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
like a sugar coma,
or that, or like, you know, like I need a stinger.
Let's go to Shy's.
Yeah,
okay,
but like,
which you all have to go. Like, it's the fucking truth.
But you know, like, but the idea here for the menu is like, you know, you can eat this, you're satiated, and it's nutritious.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're like something and delicious, I should say. And
Good.
But you can still continue on your day.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me. Like, you're not like kind of going like, ooh, well, okay, I better have a cookie or a coffee at 3:30 to give me that final push so I can go drive home. Like, that's so depressing, right? like honestly. And so, just trying to give people something that's like nourishing, tasty, and filling, but not, I don't know, coma-inducing.
Yeah.
So what did you end up going with?
Well, I think something else that comes into that is that Buffalo, and we have these amazing, like Kevin's a primarily Polish ancestry guy from Buffalo, working class. You know, I'm a Polish ancestry guy from Buffalo, working class, raised by my mom, you know, that kind of thing. And there's these amazing comfort food and ethnic food things in Buffalo, and the way our neighborhoods work, and the way immigration is really, I think, because of the Erie Canal and the lakes in Canada, immigration has shaped this area so much. And it's actually, I think, culturally, when we go away, when I lived in North Carolina or when I travel, there's so many things that we take for granted because of having Canadian radio or Canadian television. Or when I was a kid, we shared, like, I got 3 Sesame Streets. I got English Sesame Street, Spanish Sesame Street, and French Sesame Street, because our public television does Canada and does that, so 3 different times a day. And it's having that kind of, I don't want to, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone who lives in America that's more than 50 miles away from the border, but being within that border area really shapes us. Mm-hmm. And I think it shapes our food and our culture. And one of the things that we were getting at with, I think the thing that I love the most about what Kevin's done with our menu, and some of the things, like, we'll bounce ideas off of each other where I'll just be like, we need to do this. And then Kevin's like, no, but let's do this way. You know, like,
sounds like us.
Well, and so what, but, and then I wanted to, you know, we're having Polish week next week.
Okay.
And we're doing gołąbki, which is like the ultimate comfort food, and they're the Polish cabbage rolls. Mm-hmm. And they're called Lil's gołąbki because my grandmother was Lil, she old fierce Polish lady who was awesome. And I took my grandmother's recipe, but we did it with Kevin. We use a mix we do a blend of Impossible meat and mushrooms to make a blend that Kevin then makes into our Greek meatballs, our Italian meatballs. He gave me a bunch that was neutral, and he said, use the Polish flavorings on this. And it's paprika, pepper, salt, and some rice mixed in. And so we made a vegan version of the gułąbki, and then we tried it with the traditional sauce. And Kevin's like, great, I'm going to doctor it up now. And I'm like, it's great. Why does it need to be doctored up? That's my grandmother's recipe. And he made what he calls cheater gochujang from his time in Korea and from his like both of us have an Asian food fascination and love as well. And he threw some gochujang in there to give it a little bit more warm, peppery kick. We put 12 orders on a Tuesday thinking we would have them, and they sold out by Wednesday. And so we're like, oh, cool. Next time we do this, let's do, 3 times as much. And we did 36 orders the next time, and we sold them out by Friday. So people were calling Saturday and be like, they're gone. So now we're going to do like twice as many orders as we go forth as we go forward for Polish Week. And it's taking those comfort food dishes or those buffalo dishes or those different immigrant style stuff, or even from places that we're not necessarily a part of, but that we enjoy from different Asian cultures, from different menus we've had the privilege of eating on, and taking those and making those fit that ethos of, I don't want you to fall asleep after this. I want you to be able to go on with the rest of your day or feel energized and get a good portion of something that's nutritious, that doesn't just, kill you. Because it's, and again, not to say there isn't a time and a place for it, but there's, over the last decade, I'm getting older. Our bodies are machines, and as we get older, I was, and I say this sounds weird. I was lucky enough to have a heart attack when I was 37, and I say lucky because if I didn't have it then, I smoked 2.5 packs of Camel filters, and drank probably 2 bottles of wild turkey and a bottle of vodka every week because I was bartending, and that's what restaurant people do. And I was like, this is great. And had I not had the heart attack when I was 37, my heart probably would have exploded at 38 or 39, and I would have died. And along that, since that time, I've met with a nutritionist. I try and eat healthier and eat better, and I can eat everything on our menu and not feel like I'm killing myself by eating it. And there's places that I used to like to go to, or that I still like. I can't imagine, and again, no shade for anybody who does this. I still grill meat. I'm not a vegan by any means. I try and eat more plant-based. But like the idea of like, when I was 26, my idea of a treat was like, I'm going to go get a 28-ounce cowboy steak with the bone in on top of a half a pound of mashed potatoes, and we're going to man up and eat it all. And it's like the idea of like my colon just punched me for talking about eating 28 ounces of steak. Like 4 ounces is awesome. 6 ounces is awesome. And it's like, and it's that moderation. And I think that's something that Kevin does really, really well with flavor profiles, tweaking things to make fit, with good natural ingredients, and with portions and sizes and pricing going all along with that. I think he's amazing at it. So we can meet all these niches. We're not just, we're not pushing anybody away. Like my aunt, we have the Aunt Betty test. My aunt is a 75-year-old retired Polish nurse who rents from me and lives below me. And Kevin will make this and be like, take this soup to Aunt Betty. And I'm like, she enjoyed it. She said it was a little spicy. He's like, perfect. That's going to fit for everybody else. Because an old white Polish lady should think it's spicy.
Right.
But so like we want to appeal to Aunt Betty, and we also want to appeal to somebody who's like, I want everything from a local farm and everything that's, handmade and gluten-free and everything else that you can go. And we want to be able, we don't want to ever push anybody out of our door because we're not accessible or we're doing something that's going to mess with people's minds.
Well, and it seems like there's a lot of places that are vegan or vegetarian, and like they kind of stop there, and like, and that I guess for dinner that to me works really probably a little bit differently. But I like the idea of a place where the entire office can order lunch. So like you have like this person who has this allergy, and you have this person who eats keto, and you have this person who eats this way, and like we pretty much have something for everybody, but within a menu of only 20 items, which I think is like a kind of like a fun accomplishment in a weird way. Just kind of like, like we have this really small scale of everything that we can choose from, but within that, it's like, we have the West Side Polka, and that's like, pickled mustard seeds, pickles, cheese, and Polish sausage, and like that. If there's the day that you want to fall asleep after work, like that's what you get. It's like there's that, but then there's like the Western New York salad, and that's everything on that plate comes from within 90 miles. And so, like, that's a maple vinaigrette, local greens, apples, and cheese curds. You know, they're all from around here. And I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So is your menu, or is it seasonal? Is it always rotating, or is it like these are the flagship items and then those 20 items will fit everybody?
We fight about that a little bit sometimes.
Okay.
That's also working itself out.
Sure.
You know, we've been open 3 months, and, like, you know, so there's a couple of things where you're like, well, okay, that's probably never going away, or it will always be a variation of it. There's certain items that I've started appending like 2.0, 3.0 to, just so people coming in know that, like, these are all the same notes, but they've been, like, rearranged a little bit for this solo.
Gotcha.
I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a perfect example of that is we have a salad that's called the I've Been to Greece, and it's our version of a Greek salad, which is fun because everybody's had a Greek salad in Buffalo. It's nothing like what people in Greece actually eat for a Greek salad.
There's no lettuce in a Greek salad, for those wondering.
Yeah, the oriotaki is the actual Greek salad with no lettuce, and it's like big chunks of vegetables and olives and a chunk of feta cheese and oil and fresh herbs, and they're great. Yeah, it's awesome. And but so we have that on there, and that salad is the core of it. Kevin makes a homemade Greek dressing. We have the vegan Greek meatball. That core and some kind of green. But when Root Down calls us up in April and says we have our first greens out, that gets different greens in April than it's going to get in August, and it's going to get a different radish in September than it gets in March, and it's going to get a different tomato than it gets now.
Yeah, like right now, a lot of things are much more pickled or fermented or blah blah blah, because it's like we're preserving the harvest from last year so we can have vegetables in winter. I mean, this is not a new idea.
Right.
You know, and so, like, you know, but
Roy's like, to me it is.
he had a heart attack at 37.
Well, I'm like, what? That was, in all fairness, it's like 14 years ago. So, okay.
You know, but yeah, like, obviously, so come summer, it's going to be a lot more fresh vegetables.
Yeah.
You know, and stuff like that. So I feel like I owe it to myself and to the people who eat this food to give them the best of what's available at the time, while being cognizant of carbon footprints and all of that.
Yeah. So talking about the ingredients that you use, since you are working off of that motto and trying to have things fresh, who do you partner with in the local area to get some of that items? Do you go to your local supermarket and get it, or do you partner with different people?
A ton?
I mean, it's like there's a lot of, like, well, you know,
The sausages from Redlinsky.
Okay.
Sausages from Redlinsky, and they were great. When I was at the distillery, I had a good relationship with them, and they do that. A lot of the greens are from Root Down Farm. We've done some stuff with Westside Tilth right down the way. Ellen from Black Sheep makes our focaccia that we use on our focaccia pizzas and our egg sandwiches, and also makes 2 pastries for us, a vegan hand pie, which is like a savory, and then the jam brioche thing, which is this jam-filled brioche. All of our bread are Samoon bread, and then the Iraqi bread, which is what it's like a big flatbread that we use to chop up and make our pita chips for the dips Kevin makes. Those come from these new Iraqi immigrants that are like only been in Buffalo for like 3 years, who have a little halal spot on Hurdle called Hurdle Bakery. So we try and do as much as we can, as local as we can. And again, we can't claim to be 100% because you just can't.
Sure.
And there's some things at price points like, you know, it would be great if we could use local fish. I mean, you can't use local fish. I mean, you can eat like two salmon a year, but we try and make sure that it's like, you know, our salmon is line caught Atlantic, not farmed.
Sure.
You know, our chicken, we'd love to use local chicken for what we're doing, because of what our equipment and our size limitations right now. The price point and how you buy the local chicken is like you buy the whole chicken and use it and everything else. We don't necessarily have the capability to do that, so we get a product that's cruelty free and is as much to fit into that ethos as we can. So any holes that aren't local, we patch. We do some stuff with Beryl and Brine. We do things with a whole bunch of really cool people that we've had relationships with.
And also, like, you know, just because it's local doesn't mean it's necessarily a net positive either, right? Like, you can have, like, you know, a brownfield grown tomato, and well, it's local, but but it's not necessarily any better, because of it. So, and then there's also, as always, we are a business, right? At the beginning,
you got to stay open.
Well,
right.
and so price is a consideration. Buffalo and Milwaukee are the number one cities of coupon use, and we can't have there's definitely a ceiling. We were talking about it actually right before this recording about we don't probably want a sandwich to ever really break $15. Mm-hmm. That seems okay, at that point we have left the building, right? And we're not even close to that right now. And just it's breakfast and lunch,
right?
You don't want people to wait until payday,
right? You're not going to charge somebody $15 for a bacon, egg, and cheese.
Depends where you are.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're downstate, then
we try not to. I mean, there's certain things where it's
But we also have a menu where you can get out of here for $8.
Yeah,
and so we try to it's up to the consumer, I think.
Sure.
Also, and there's people out there who will put a special on that maybe is more expensive, but we're kind of doing this for the 50 people that we know in town who would be interested in this. Mm-hmm. And then there's other things that we put on a special where it's we really think this is a wide net that everybody can kind of approach and is at a price point that's reasonable and still accomplishes all the other things that we've been discussing.
Yeah, we're doing the one behind us on the board, the Cbd Chicken Salad. Kevin came up with that because RJ from Barrel and Brine worked with
Bison Botanics,
who is making CBD, and came up with a hot sauce. And
it's called High Street Hot Sauce, and it's 3 days old, I feel like.
It's awesome, and he nailed it. He brought us in a sample, and I'm like, looks like Franks and butter that you put on wings, and it's but it tastes 1,000 times better. It's that you can taste sweetness in the peppers. It's beautiful, and it has CBD in it. And Kevin's like, CBD buffalo chicken salad. And I'm like, yeah, that special is a wide net. We're throwing that over.
Right.
Whether you care about super local and the Iraqi bread we use, or you're just man, what do I get from Stakeout today? And you're like, they have a CBD chicken sandwich over at this little cafe that's named after some arty shit. Should we go there? And we
not
are
a wide net.
We are happy when people walk in and call us Godots. We love that. It's sort of fun.
Yeah, we're definitely waiting for go dots.
Yeah, go to the Godots, man. That place is awesome.
Well, that being said, so what is the story behind the name? What made you choose that?
Well, we were going back and forth on names, and at one point we were really close to Café Valklav or something like that. But then it was
Polish.
But then it was well, that boxes us in too hard in terms of, I think we'll never overcome that perception that we're a place that you can pretty much only get borscht and have angry Polish ladies giving you spoiled milk and some stale bread, and so just trying to get that out of the way, and then. Samuel Beckett, who wrote Waiting for Godot, wrote a play that was once dedicated to Václav Havel. So part of the reason we were going with Václav, you talk, I'm running.
Yeah, we were going back and forth, and we're Café Solidarność, Cafe this, and because we're two Polish guys from Buffalo, and it's
you made that clear.
Where are we going? Yeah, sorry. And so we end up with Beckett because we opened up during the pandemic,
right?
And Godot is this. It's the play about nothing. It's like serious Seinfeld. Two guys hang out, and they're waiting for a guy named Godot who never shows up. Twice. It's 2 acts about nothing, and 2 acts where nothing happens. The resolution is nothing happens. But they carry root vegetables around with them, so we're like, oh, that's great, carrots and beets. We can do some of that. And we're 2 guys who opened a cafe in the middle of a pandemic, hoping customers show up. So it wasn't really that much of a stretch. And it is absurd. The idea that. Beckett's thought of, not as sort of an absurdist, I guess, a modernist, a semi-absurdist, and it's the existence of, life waiting for nothing. What are we doing? There's a whole bunch of implications when you read the play and analyze it about, we get up, we work, we go, is this all there is?
And so we named the place after that.
Yeah, that's where it came from. Well, and it's our first super slow day. Kevin looks at me and he's like, "Should we kill ourselves?" And I'm like, "Maybe." And that's a line in the play where it's "Shall we kill ourselves?" No, we'll just keep waiting. I have a pocket full of root vegetables. That'll get us through it. And so it fit, and we think it was appropriate, and again, serendipitous in some ways. Beckett wrote it for us, man.
Well,
So what was... You guys made the news, so congrats on that. And then what was that experience, and then how did that benefit you guys? Being featured in that article and then having them come here and film, and you were able to semi-showcase what you guys were all about and then generate a little bit more hype.
Oh man, this is a hard one because it's sort of a delicate answer, I think, because I don't want to come off as like, I don't want to feel like I'm an athlete talking about myself in the third person where it's like, Michael Jordan always takes the shot when Michael Jordan needs to take the shot, but quite honestly, I think one of the reasons why I felt no trepidation about going into business with Kevin, and besides our friendship, and I hope he would say the same thing about me. I'm feeding it, but it's that both of us, I think, have pretty good reputations in the communities we've been in, with other restaurants we've worked for. Neither one of us we don't really blow up bridges very often. We're more, like, okay, that didn't work out. That's
or even
okay.
burn them.
Yeah, we don't burn them. We don't. Yeah, sorry to fuck up the metaphor. I guess. We're not bridge blower uppers. We're
okay.
We're bridge builders. So what's that joke? I build.
I don't understand jokes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you have no sense of humor. You have great delivery, though. It's his delivery that's the key. But so going through all that, we both, I think, we've had good relationships with people that we've worked with and former customers and guests and friends. And we both cast a pretty wide net as far as people in the industry who we've done. And, in some ways we lucked out because it was slow news time in November and December without everything. Like, let's go to see what Christmas shopping looks at. And you're like, everyone's going to hang themselves if they see what Christmas shopping looked like this year. Because no one can do it. And so, again, serendipitously, there seemed to be this space. But the fact that, Andrew Galerno has been to places and talked to people and talked to us for interviews for other things, and the guys from Step Out and the guys from Liberty from Buffalo Rising who came on out with Newell, and just from other things we've done in the past, stuff that Kevin's done in not only his cooking jobs but in his other jobs, his other job at Klein Hands and his job at Just Buffalo, and stuff that I've done in my other jobs and talking to people. And so it just sort of all happened. And I was like, wow, we got a lot of press. I really hope we can deliver all this shit now when people come. And we managed to pull it off, and it worked.
So in conclusion, it has been beneficial.
Outstanding.
Yeah, I suck at one-word answers. My students, so I actually, it was 2 semesters ago, I was in class, and somebody asked me a question, and this is like getting close to May. So almost the end of the semester. And they're like, Professor Roy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah. And I went on teaching, and this kid in the back room is like, fuck yeah. And he jumps up and down, and I'm like, whoa.
You won the pool?
What just yeah, they actually had a pool. Oh, wow. And they literally did. 12 of my students started a pool where they threw in $5 a piece, and they picked dates of when they thought I would answer a yes or no question with a yes or a no, and had been trying to ask me more simple questions, like around their date. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting question. It's like, should we wear shoes or not? Well, it all depends on the barometric pressure and how things go. And so I answered with the yes, and this kid's joking. He's like, dude, you just won me $65. And I'm like, bring coffee to class on Friday.
Right.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So speaking of coffee, where do you get your coffee from? This is fantastic.
Another one of our partners, Typico.
Okay.
And they've been great to work with since the very get-go. I used to go there quite a bit when they were around the corner. They've moved since. And when we were looking for coffee partners, like Roy's really good friends with the folks from Underground, and I know people at Public, and so now it's like, well, I mean, do you want a longer answer?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much time do we have to fill?
No, we're good.
Do I get to Roy this for a moment?
Yeah.
Nice.
But we were like, oh man, how do we choose when we're friends with everybody? That was kind of the issue. And we were like, well, you know what? We'll do one company each month, and it will work like that. And so we were really excited about that idea. But then I was talking to Tommy Lombardo, who owns Little Club, and he was like, that's a nightmare. And I was just like, well, why? And he said, 1, you're going to have to track down a different vendor every month. 2, what do you do with the coffee that you didn't sell that month? And so then I was like, oh, those are really, really cogent points. And so then now we're like, okay, we get to play the fun game of, well, price and taste now. So, and then Typico, was the right point on the graph of taste and price per pound, and we've been using them ever since.
And then one of the other big things, because we love a ton of other coffee, Bean Bastard and Undergrounds and Public and other things that people that we've worked with in the past or had drank their stuff, and it's good. But the other big thing about Typico is because they were in the neighborhood before, and a lot of, not right now, but as things get going in the spring, a lot of our business is going to be foot traffic from people who live in the neighborhood, and we've probably had 100 people who walked in here since we've been open, and we've only been open for about 12 weeks, and we've probably had 100 people who walked in and been like, "Oh, coffee from Typico, man, I miss that place," and it's like, yes.
Nice.
Had we opened in a neighborhood that had another place that was there beforehand, that may have. But Typico also they do a great job. They do a great job roasting the coffee.
When we opened up, we wanted to strategically partner with people in the neighborhood, so that's why we get our baked goods from Black Sheep, and we get our coffee from Typico, and we're trying to work on some other stuff. We're trying to do something with Bread Hive eventually. That's going to happen, and Kahari just opened up around the corner, and
Kahari's is in the old Typico.
Yeah, and so we think there's other. That's the other thing that's really fun about a place this small. We can't do everything ourselves just because of the physical limitations of the space, and also we want to be in a place that's 8 to 4 and then go home. So strategic partnerships, just picking up who does something better than I do and what don't I want to do.
Right.
and then you go find those people to augment what you're doing.
I think going along with all that stuff too, with working with other people, is that, and it's one of the things I love, is this idea of, you serve lunch and you're located within a mile of me. I must crush you and put you out of. Fuck that. Fuck the Walmarting of America. Excuse my language, but of the Walmarting of America. It's like, it's always been a thing with me. I mean, when I was first and again, I've been at Buffalo Distilling, and we worked with a whole bunch of different people collaborating. That was awesome. When I worked at Osaka and Blue, we had a few people that we worked with that we collaborated with. But then when I was at Pearl Street the first time, Tim Herzog and me, we did, and Pearl Street and a bunch of other places, we did the first Buffalo Brew Fest together. And then we also did a Guitar Fest with WNED. And it was great. It was the first Guitar Fest, and it was 15 different bars. And I walked out of a meeting at one point, and this is back in 1998, 99. Because guys started yelling "I booked that band on Thursday, so you can't book jazz next week." And it's and I literally looked at everybody. I'm like, guys, instead of fighting over 500 people, why don't we try and get 5,000 people to come to all of our places over 2 weeks, rather than be I need my 31 people out of the 500 that go out for live music.
That's a good point.
And I think that attitude is one of the things that it's been a happy change for me in the last decade, with the tightness of the Buffalo hospitality community. A lot of people are starting to, not that there isn't competition, not that there isn't stuff like that, but a lot of newer restaurant owners or business owners within this concept within hospitality. It's about working together. It's not about trying to shut somebody else down or getting an I can be the only one with root down stuff on the menu. Quite honestly, I want 10 other people in the neighborhood to have root down stuff on the menu, because then I don't have to drive to Clarence to pick it up, because they're going to send it out on a truck. That would be great, And so I think there's a lot more of that. And one of the COVID, I don't know what phrase to use, but one of the positives that's come out of the whole COVID thing is I think that guests are starting to see the value of local, are starting to see the value of small business, and real small business, not the government says a small business is if you do less than $50 million in revenue and have less than 900 employees. It's I don't know where that's a small business, but it sure as fuck isn't in Buffalo.
I know, seriously. A small business for us is literally 1 to 12 people.
Yeah.
Max.
And so I think that the public is really starting to understand that it's oh, wait, my neighbor there works at a small business, and her second job is at a small business, and the person who watches my kid has a job at a small business, and the guy who plows my driveway does this on the weekend, and he owns a small business and works for another small business.
Yeah, but it's kind of wild, to take the Cbd chicken sandwich we mentioned earlier. It's okay, we're buying the hot sauce from High Street, which employs Bison Botanics and Barrel and Brine. There's radishes on there from Root Down, which is a farm out in Clarence. The bread is from Hurdle, from the Iraqi refugees, right? And so it's this one sandwich is an economic driver for like at least 5 different places.
The spider web is massive.
You know,
and it's
and-
really cool that you guys are thinking about that to really help.
Well, we didn't come up with this to help anyone. It just happens to like it's just like this moment where like things line up perfectly, right? Where it's just like, you know, the sandwich fulfills all of the delicious requirements that we want, and it happens to also fill out these ethic requirements that we kind of aspire to. Well, you can't do it always, but like, you know, yeah, you buy your lunch from other places around town. Like, you know, if they're ordering everything from one of those huge food brokers, very little of that money is really staying here. It's just kind of going to an owner's pocket and the commission that the food broker has. And those people need to eat. I'm not taking away from anything like that. And there's certainly issues of scale where it makes more sense to do so. But on the scale that we're working, it's like the more I can do that, the better.
And there's minimums too. So like you're not going to buy chicken from Tyson because you have to buy an ungodly amount of poundage of chicken when you're like, we're making 3 sandwiches, dude. Like we don't need all that.
Yeah, he's got 33,000 pounds of chicken wings. And like, you know, I've got at most maybe like 30 pieces of chicken breasts laying around between the freezer and the fridge and what's cooked.
Yeah. So speaking on scale, like what is the square footage of this space? And then, you know, obviously there's going to be photos posted on our Instagram and things, but like just to give people reference of what you're actually dealing with.
This would make a really nice 1-bedroom apartment. That probably about 750 square feet. I'd say. Maybe not even 700, 650, 700 square feet.
Oh my god, it really would. That could be like the bath, and then there's the bedroom.
Yeah,
and there's like
dude.
the living room, and it's like the hangout space.
I would totally have. I would have like a lofted, like a little spiral staircase to my lofted queen size bed area that you just sort of like roll into. It'd be pretty awesome. Like this would be an awesome apartment, but it's really that small.
Yeah,
and it's like, you know, how many people have a 750 square foot 1-bedroom apartment that are like, we want to put 20 seats in there and we want to have 40 people in our front yard. We want to feed all of them 3 times a day. Who wants to come? And it's like, yeah, you're a moron.
How many employees do you have?
There's 4, including the 2 of us.
Okay.
Yeah, so 4 total, including us. And then I think when our idea right now, fully staffed, we have some expansions planned. We're currently working with M&T Bank and the Small Business SBA, the Small Business Association, to try and get some more funding because we want to build out. With Duville coming back online, they're a big economic driver here with the campus and the students. And they're building this gigantic medical building, which is literally like 250 feet from our front door around the corner. That's going to have like 50. I just read a thing in Business First that said something like 7,000 unique visitors a week to the medical office building, because it's going to be, besides the stuff for students, it's going to be doctors' offices and chiropractors and occupational therapists.
Like labs, a lot of lab work. It's a full,
and
dude, it's ridiculous.
We don't need to pull a lot of that to be financially viable.
Yeah, if we get 50 to 75 people a day between there, the students, there's 300 and some odd staff and faculty at Grover Cleveland High School when they're up and running. And then on nights and afternoons when Kleinhans does stuff. Not to mention, you know, we're not open on Sundays. We will be open whenever we get to have the Allentown Art Festival again.
Right.
We will be open on Allentown Sunday. We will be open on the Garden Walk Sunday. And so, you know, being able to touch all those people and do that in the neighborhood, that scale comes up, and that's why we're doing some of the expansion. Because how do we do all of that? Like our kitchen, no joke, is probably 160 square feet. Like, I mean, 8 feet across by 12 feet wide, something like that.
So how does the expansion work? Is there, I'm sure there's permitting, like you have to get blessed off by the landlord. Has that been a conversation?
Back to our landlord being amazing.
Yeah, Bill Mack is his name, and he's just awesome.
Like each time, like he no longer is accepting questions from us. He's just like, go ahead and do what you want to do.
He let us write our own lease. Like it was fun. Like we were talking about the lease, and I'm like, people were still getting closed down by COVID, and I'm like, all right, man, we're going to have a fight about this one, but I want to put in like an act of God thing where if the governor closes everybody down, if we're closed for more than half the month because of COVID, we don't have to pay rent. And I'm like, Bill, is that okay? And he's like, have your lawyer draw it up, put it in there.
And like, you know, we painted our logo on the outside of the building and gave this whole place a facelift.
Yeah.
And like that was like absolutely no problem. He let us put a sign on like the house next door that is also his, but like, you know, like basically put nails into the outside of the home to have another sign for here. He's absolutely, so he's not an issue when it comes to our expansion plans. I guess is the best way to say that. And then
does the mayor come into play?
Well, we're
like
not,
at what echelon does
well,
this?
we're not beer and wine, and so that like a lot less people are going to have any objection to what we're doing.
Sure.
We'll have to get a permit from the city for the patio, but that and shout out to the city. Like we had a really good experience opening up. We took the keys to this place on September 15th, and we opened on November 6th. So we were literally 6 weeks from nothing in here to up and running and selling things to people.
Wow.
Starting a corporation, getting all of our permits from the health department. County health department was awesome. Was awesome. The New York State websites, like New York State, it used to take 2 weeks and again, some of this is because of COVID, because people are at home.
Mm-hmm.
We filed our corporate documents, and we got our corporate approval and our tax ID from New York State and the federal government in 2 days. So like, Kevin and I we were a little left of center on things, and I'm like, we are the chair people of a corporation. Do we want to beat the shit out of ourselves for being assholes? Like,
it's like the Winnie the Pooh meme where he's wearing a tux.
Yeah, like we can vote for the right things now and vote against our own self-interest. This is awesome, But all that was great, and then in the city, like. Marie Gorman, who runs she's sort of like the guru of all the permitting department. Like everything goes through her office. She lives in the neighborhood, and she knew we wanted to get open on the Thursday, and like we had money in, and we had to open up so we could start bringing things in. I call her at the city. Our last inspection happened at 3. The guy's like, "Well, I'll file this on Monday," and I'm like, "Dude, she's waiting for you to put it in." He's like, "Okay," and he called her, and she did. I call her up. I'm like, "Can I come down? Like, we're almost ready to lock up. I can be there in a half hour." And she's like, "No, I can drop it off." And she literally dropped our permit off to us on the way home.
Wow.
And, Joe Golombek, who's a personal friend, he's the North District councilman. He's not our councilman, but he was very helpful. Kevin liked to say we had some Sherpas running around for us, helping us out at City Hall. And we did, and it was, and again, it worked out. It was not a crazy experience. So the hardest part about the expansion is going to be the hardest part about the expansion is just going to be making sure we get all the financing. And luckily, the SBA has done some things, and Congress did some things in this last relief bill to strengthen SBA lending. We didn't qualify for PPP. We don't qualify for EIDL because we weren't open before the pandemic.
Right.
So nothing that's been made aid to businesses we qualify for.
Gotcha.
But the SBA stuff through our regular lender, SBA added, they used to pay the first 3 months. Now they're making the first 6 months of the loan payment. So the banks are like, oh, so wait, we get back 10-15% of our investment in the first 6 months on the SBA, great. And they also guarantee the loan after like 20% of the loan is paid. If we default on it, the SBA pays it off, and the bank still makes their money, so the banks are more likely to give money out, which is good for real small. It sucks when it's, $180 million in revenue, hedge fund guys who have 2 employees who are taking advantage of that stuff. But when it's real small business, it's good.
Absolutely.
And I encourage anybody out there to either go to the Buff State SBA place or go online to the SBA or just give a call. Everybody's been super helpful trying to help us out with that stuff. And so that's the big thing. And we're trying to expand. We're going to put in a deli cooler. Kevin can talk a little bit about the menu plan with trying to do more grab and go so we can serve more people without having to hire 20 people to do it.
Well, and also like we're finding that more and more people are excited about like a thing that they can reheat at home. Like when we did Glumke, for example, we're actually going to put a modifier on next week where it's like, do you want it hot or cold? Because like half people were like, yeah, I want 2 orders, but just give me reheat instructions. And so like when we did football packages, there was a lot of reheat stuff there too. And so as we expand, like we're going to have more prepared foods. There seems to be kind of like a call for a lunch thing where like you kind of walk in and you get like a half a sandwich and some kind of side to go with it, and you can just get out of here really fast. And plus, it frees up capacity for me and for a potential second kitchen person too, to kind of focus on the other things that we have to make at the time. Well,
there's a couple other things that it gives us it lets us be in that niche that I think both of us are in. Being again, neither we're undeniably working class Polish American guys from Buffalo, but we also can talk to you about 7,000 different ingredients and wine and beer and booze and all sorts of stuff. And it lets us fit in that niche where, you know, we can be an artisanal market, but it's not like Brooklyn where you're going to get shooed out or price is going to put you out. So like the way I'm looking at it is like, imagine like Gershio's or like that old deli that your grandma might have taken you before they closed when you were a little kid. And like, whether it be an African-American neighborhood or a Polish neighborhood or a German neighborhood, and they have a deli cooler filled with a whole bunch of pre-made stuff that you can take, but that stuff being from local farms and with Kevin's attention to detail and homemade dressings and Cbd chicken salad instead of just like tuba mayo and shitty chicken mixed together.
Right.
And so having that, being able to fill that niche with the grab and go, and then yeah, I think that I had one other thing, but I'm sure it'll come back.
The most wonderful thing a customer has said thus far is that, like, we're really cool, but also extremely approachable. Like, you know, like we're not interested in gatekeeping. I've had experiences. I've been a gatekeeper myself. It's exhausting work. You know, it's not really fulfilling at the end of the day. And I don't know. Just, there is some niceness about us being older.
Yeah, there's some definite things we've learned along the way being a little bit older, but I bristle. Kevin's much more diplomatic about the gatekeeping thing like that. I dress like that. I'm wearing a pair of shorts in the wintertime and I have a hoodie on, and it's like I have a lot of really bad. Mark Supples and I think had the same tailor for a while. Mark, who used to own Mother's, we have lots of Hawaiian shirts in the summer, and it's like. I went to Catholic school for 13 years. I had to wear a shirt and tie and dress shoes for grammar school and high school. I sold advertising for a little while. I don't need to do it anymore. And I've been to places that, you know, you can't go in there looking like that. And my immediate answer is like, oh, now I'm definitely going in there looking like that. Fuck you. My money's just as green as anybody else's. I hate that gatekeeper shit, whether it be in gatekeepers of culture, gatekeepers of music, gatekeepers of food. I don't ever want to make somebody feel dumb because they don't know what gochujang is. I'm never going to be like, oh, how pedestrian of you. You don't know what gochujang is? You know what? I didn't know what fucking gochujang was at some point either. And, and that's always been
I don't know what that is.
Still
that's
don't know.
fine.
Well, it's like it's fun because it gives an opportunity to
educate.
And like without being
a pompous prick.
Yeah.
Two of my two of my favorite jobs. Like when I started.
See you later.
Can you go make us something?
Yeah. Seriously, I don't know what you're doing.
Do you want to cook something for us? You put that talent to use. I love, just as an aside, Kevin looked at me like probably our third week open at one point, and 3 good regulars who are friends of ours come in, and I'm talking to all of them, and he is, and then another friend of ours orders takeout, and he's just like, everyone I know is a fucking talker. All you people do is talk for fucking hours. Like, how do you just shut the fuck up? And he like walks back in the kitchen, and I'm like,
He finally snapped.
it was great.
Finally snapped.
All you fucking
I was
talkers.
done then. You know, like it's not a snap. It's more just like an acknowledgement of like, oh fuck all of this. You know, like I can't go home yet, but let's have a little bit of silence for a half an hour.
Go stir something.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So let's touch on social media hours, and that way people know when they can come and enjoy, because there's a lot to enjoy.
Or follow your journey, because you guys are doing a lot.
Yeah.
Kevin does the Instagram.
Yeah, it's a GODOTBFLO.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then it's GODOTBFLO, Café GODOTBFLO on Facebook. And then our website is cafegodotbflo.com. And you can get our menu. You can, or we also are available on the Appetit platform. If you go to Appetit, you'll find us. But if you go through our
Also
website
a local company,
and click
like
order,
they're awesome.
yeah, that's why we're like one last fuck you to Gatekeeper, like fuck DoorDash, that commercial in the Super Bowl. I watched the first 35 seconds and I'm like, this is going to be a great commercial. And then I saw it was for DoorDash and I'm like, how do I get to their corporate offices and burn that motherfucker? Like every one of those people, like they like, you all think like, and I'm not faulting people for using them because you don't know, they take a 30 to 35% cut off of a restaurant. So if a restaurant's selling you a $10 sandwich, they get 7 out of that $10. Our average margin in this business, after everything's said and done, like if you're doing it at, the goal is 10% profit margin, which is stupid compared to any other business. It's always like, our goal is to make 200% more than what we sell. And it's like here, it's like, I want to make, if I sell $1 million, I want to make $100,000. But realistically, most restaurants operate somewhere between 3 and 5%.
Wow.
After costs and labor and all the rest of that stuff. And then these guys come in and they take 30% off the top of whatever you're selling. And so like you literally lose money to make sure that you're having visibility and getting cash flow because you need the cash flow. And to counter that, Appetite started up. It's a local platform. They're only available online. They don't have an app yet, but you can program them into your browser on your phone as a default spot. And they work with over 100 local restaurants, a couple liquor stores. Their drivers are the old takeout taxi drivers, and they have some of their own drivers through. And they do delivery. You can order pickup through them. And they charge us as a business. They charge us a monthly flat fee, which is very reasonable.
Cool.
As opposed to, I mean, there was one place that was friends with the guy who started Appetite when the pandemic first started. Using the 3 delivery services, they did $36,000 in delivery business in the first 4 weeks of COVID because they were like a fast delivery place.
Yeah.
It cost them almost $19,000 to do that. And so they literally lost like $6,000 in order to do $36,000 in cash flow to pay people and pay bills. But they didn't make any money off that $36,000 they did. They lost money to do
Which
it.
is to say you can order it via Appetite on our website.
Nice.
I like how you summarize everything. It really keeps
I just wait. And it's like, wait.
I need you in my real
And
like,
wait.
outside life.
and hope.
Nope.
And still waiting. And then you're Monday through Friday, 8 to 4?
No, Tuesday through Saturday.
Tuesday through, okay.
Can I start taking you on dates with me so you can summarize for women I'm
It's like, why would I want that?
You're like, what he's trying to say is now's the point in the
I'm
evening.
married and have like a 10-month-old child. I want to be home.
All right. Well,
That's a good point.
okay.
Well, thank you guys so much for being on. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Don't ask
I'm
that.
hesitant to say that because we're at an hour and 10.
I'm not gonna. I'm actually.
Playing both sides.
I'm not gonna say it anymore. Except that I just want to add one short thing.
And we're off.
No, this one's really short.
I got a mute here.
I want to
just kidding.
thank everybody who has come in and supported us so far, and I want to thank you guys for having us. And I want to thank this guy next to me because he downplays a lot of the stuff he does, and like, well, it just sort of accidentally happened, or yeah, it wasn't really an ethos. Yeah, there's an ethos to all this, and there's ideas, and he's really committed to them, and he's much more passionate about them than his personality wants to see. And it's been an honor to work with him for the last, even though there's times when we want to, we do this, and he's like, shut the fuck up. But it's been an honor to work with him, and I want to thank him, thank you, and thank everybody that's come in, and thanks for being here for us and helping us out with it.
Absolutely. Go check them out. They got great food. And thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers,
you.
guys. Thanks.